Are you a sad individual living under a Parisian opera house and dropping chandeliers on people's heads for fun? Well, you may want to stop because that's a crime and get yourself a podcast. How do you do that? Easy. It's with Anchor. Anchor is a totally free app and website, and you can record from your phone or your computer. You don't need fancy smancy equipment. Seriously, I have recorded podcasts from my bathtub while I was bathing. Anchor is free and super easy to use. Anchor has really simple podcasting tools. You sign up and then you start podcasting. It really is that simple. Within an hour of starting my podcast, I was already distributed on Spotify. Now I'm on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Breaker, and Radio Public. So look for the app or the website. The website is anchor.fm, and the app, just go to your friendly local app store and look up Anchor. That's ANCHOR. Happy podcasting! Hello, my hippie fruits, and today on the Kawaii Study Bartfast podcast, we are going to start a people who have been victimized by the writing of Cassandra Clare Society. That's right, we are going to be talking about Chain of Gold, the first book in the Last Hour series by Cassandra Clare. Doodly-doo, where do I start? Okay, first of all, there will be spoilers, for the books up until Chain of Gold. I don't think I can, actually talk about it without it. So, if you haven't read those, then maybe you shouldn't listen to this until you do, and trust me, I understand that that's a lot of books. But, yeah, you might want to think about doing that, and honestly, to get the whole story of this, you would probably need to read the stories from the Bang Chronicles, Tales of the Shadowhunters Academy, and Ghosts of the Shadow Market, because they all have stories that end up relating to what happens in this book. So that would be my advice. But honestly, if I were to read the series, I would read it the order it was published, because there's kind of foreshadowing and stuff that comes along that, say if you read the Infernal Devices before the Mortal Instruments, there's some reveals in the Mortal Instruments series that's given up in the Infernal Devices, so that would be kind of spoiled for you, if that makes any sense. So I am so excited to be talking about this book, because I've been literally waiting on it for years. I can't remember. I'd have to go into my Goodreads to see how long it's been on my wanting to read, but I'm just so glad it's here. So to start with, what I really liked about it was the characters. The characters are great. One of the things I most appreciate about Cassie's books is that they're characters who come together to form a family, but they are all different from each other. Like, Tessa is different from Clary, who's different from Emma, who's different from Cordelia, and who's different from Lucy. And it's just, in general, a really incredible and fun dynamic. I do think that Cordelia Carstairs may be, my favorite Shadowhunter lead. I mean, I love Tessa, but something about Cordelia, just, she's just such an incredible character. She's just, like I said before, I'm sorry, I'm probably gonna repeat myself a lot, because I really, really love this book. But something that struck me is that she was so radically different from everybody else. And her background is that she's Persian, and she's moved all over the place. So she's Persian, but she's living in English society, but she really doesn't feel like she fits into either of them, because she's moved around so much. And that's just like a really interesting internal struggle for me. And Lucy, how can we forget about Lucy? Lucy is fantastic. The book opens with her part, and honestly, it's probably one of my favorite openings of any Shadowhunters book ever. It's very mystical and very fairy tale, and basically, she's been attacked by a demon, and she meets this boy, and he's a ghost, but he's not a ghost, and it turns out that it is Jesse Blackthorn, who is the child of Tatiana Blackthorn, who, if you'll remember, her father ate her husband after he was turned into a worm by contracting a sexually transmitted demon pox disease. And yes, that was stuff that happened in the Infernal Devices. It's actually a plot point that's actually brought up a lot in this book. So, Jesse Blackthorn is important because he was the cause for Tatiana in the Bane Chronicles, the story The Midnight Era, I'm pretty sure it is. Anyway, so she basically wanted Magnus Bane's help in killing a bunch of Shadowhunters to resurrect Jesse, who was born weak. And when he became of age, he wanted to become a Shadowhunter more than anything. So they tried to give him marks, and his body reacted badly to it. And basically, he bled from everywhere, and he died pretty horribly. But Tatiana used magic and kept his last breath, so he's kind of like between. Some people can see him, he can see the dead, and sometimes he can become physical, but I mean, the sorry about that. That was a very strange noise. Another interesting thing about Jesse is that there was a family tree with the Lightwood Coasters and Herondales, and it went up to 2007. And it says that Lucy Herondale marries Jesse Blackthorn. So I'm not sure if like he's going to end up like being risen up from the dead, or but also, if I remember correctly, it says that he dies in like 1930 something. I don't know. I'd have to look at it, but so it doesn't have his death as his actual death date. And Cassie has confirmed that the family trees are not necessarily something that you can trust. So that's really interesting, because also the family tree, it says that James and Cordelia are going to be married. I forgot what, if it shows the year that they were married according to the timeline, but that may not happen. So that's interesting, because it could be that the deaths that they're talking about are people being stripped of marks. So I thought that that was a really interesting theory that I saw. And then we come to Grace. Grace is super interesting because we know from the Midnight Era that she has like some woo-woo mind control siren type ability where she can get people to do what she wants, because Magnus Bane broke through of it, and if I remember correctly, she actually like threatened to kill him. But anyway, Grace is the adopted child of Tatiana Blackthorn. According to the family tree, her last name is Cartwright, but I mean, how do we know that that's accurate? Because it never actually says who Grace's parents were. So that's interesting. Grace is pretty awful. Like, I don't by her, like, oh, I'm a victim and I'm trying to get away from my mother. I don't. I just, because she's too shady, and I kind of want a redemption arc for her because I'm a sucker for a good redemption arc. But, like, the things she's done, like, the hurt she's compounded upon, like, my close personal Shadowhunter friends is just like, I, I don't want her. Like, Cordelia can, like, chop off her head with Cortana and I'd be fine with it. But yes, Grace is basically emotionally abused by her adoptive mother, who basically used necromancy, black magic, on Jesse to try and keep him alive. So there's a bunch of demons at their place. It's wild times. And then there's Thomas and Christopher and Charles, and honestly, I kept on kind of getting mixed up between these three, and I don't know why. But I mean, one of the things that I really liked about this book is that the relationships are already there. It's not like when Simon and Clary met Jace or when Emma and Julian met Kit. It's like these people know each other, they're established relationships. Uh, and then there's Alistair, which is another really interesting plot point that comes up in the Tales of the Shadowhunters Academy and Ghosts of the Shadow Market. Sorry, for some reason had a mild little brain meltdown. But it's just, these stories are part of this story, so they're kind of important. But basically, Alistair trying to bully somebody got somebody killed, and James, or maybe it was Matthew. Man, I can't remember off the top of my head all. But anyway, one of them was basically expelled because they thought that he was responsible for the death. And then the one that was left over, I mean, I want to, it had to have been Matthew, who ended up setting off an explosion so he could go be with his parabatai. Yeah, that's what happened. So they have a legitimate reason to not like Alistair. And the thing was is that I kind of know that I'm supposed to feel sorry for him, but his answer to not being bullied was to be a bully himself, and that's not a position I can respect at all. It's one of the reasons why I hate Severus Snape. So yeah, so many characters to add to the canon. The ones that were added in the novellas, but Tessa and Jem and Will are here too, and there's a part where Will Herondal, of course, breaks my heart again. Like, the infernal devices wasn't enough. How could you, Cassie? There's a part in this book. It's with Will and Tessa, and Jem comes in, and it's just it's so beautiful. I love the relationship. It's one of my favorite love stories of all time. But anyway, enough about that. The plot of this book is basically there are demon attacks happening during the day, and everybody is very confused about it, and the attacks start to get more frequent and more vicious, and there's a poison involved that, like, if a demon scratches you or bites you, you end up with black veins and it leads to your death. Meanwhile, James Arundel has done the shadow thing. He can basically slip into a shadow world and or become a shadow. It's very fascinating, but that is because his mother is the daughter of a demon, because she's a warlock, and she shouldn't have been able to get pregnant. So that's something that always interests me about the character of James Arundel. It's just, he shouldn't actually exist according to Shadowhunter lore, but then again, if you read this series, you know that the Shadowhunter lore is full of crap. as like with the family trees and stuff, it's like it's not accurate to the truth, which is another really fascinating aspect of the series, that you can't trust the group, that a big group like that necessarily, because basically in a way shadow hunting is a cult. I mean, it kind of is. I mean, like if you're stripped as your marks, you're shunned. You can't contact your family ever again. It's a cult. And the fact that these books are basically, as we go on, they're kind of peeling back the layers of this, that questioning authority is not necessarily a bad thing. And I really appreciate this. Grace. Have I mentioned that I really don't like Grace? I do think that she's being used in this, but I think that partially she's responsible, and there's something weird going on with her and Jesse, I think. Like, I think that Jesse actually knows more than he says. I could be wrong, though, and we're gonna have to wait another year to find out, but, so, more of the plot. Cordelia has come to the Shadowhunters to, because her family has been traveling around like everywhere, and her father is basically being put on trial for making a mistake in a battle. So she has to deal with the pressures of that and society and stuff like that. And she meets up with Lucy, who's planned to be her parabatai. And they have adventures. And did I mention that Anna Lightwood is involved? I love Anna Lightwood so much, and this book made me love her even more. And the whole thing about like Anna and Ariadne, because she's here too, and I am so happy, and this book is just wonderful. And it's one of those things where it's like I want to talk about it more and more, but I don't want to spoil it because it was so good and it was so heart-wrenching, and it's just so beautiful, and there was so much pain involved. And I want to start a GoFundMe to charge Cassandra Clare with the pain and suffering, even though I read the Infernal Devices and kind of sort of knew what I was getting into. Anyway, okay, that's quite a rant. I think I'll stop now. Anyway, this book was magnificent. I'd highly recommend the entire Shadowhunter series if you've never read it, but you're into fantasy. Like, the heartbreak is real. I know people have talked about A Song of Ice and Fire, but I don't know. I think that this just this book got me. It's incredible. I'm so happy I read it. Anyway, that's it for the podcast. Have a happy day, keep it fruity, and don't forget to be kind.